Welcome back to the Fide Podcast. I'm Dan Beresh, founder of Fide, and this is a podcast where we talk about enterprise B2B marketing and really get into the details of how to go to market in really, a challenging time, 2026. So many things going on, so many things changing in the world, and enterprise buying, I think, being even more difficult, than it has been in the past. Today, I'm joined by Prateek Mathur, the head of marketing for SAP SuccessFactors in Asia Pacific. And Prateek, I'm so excited to have you here. We've had such an interesting discussion coming up to this recording, and I just think you have such incredible wisdom to share with us. So thanks for taking the time today.
Daniel, it's such a pleasure to be here with you today, and such an exceptional work that you have already been doing putting together this platform for marketers. And I'll really love this series, and it's just an honor to be here as well. So thank you so much for the opportunity, Danny.
Well, I'm excited to get into the discussion with you, and something that came up in our prior chats was just about the marketing funnel. And I think that's where I'd love to start by, asking you about you in your everyday are thinking about how to market to the enterprise. And we think about this idea of a funnel, which I think is somewhat reductive, right? And selling into B2C, I know about the product. Oh, this is great. I want to buy it. I buy it. This is not what happens in enterprise marketing, right? There is a decision committee. There's so many different touch points. And I think increasingly the buyer journey is full of these touch points that we as marketers have to create, but there's no guarantee of them being touched in a certain order or anything like that. So
Yes.
the question is, how do you deal with that as a marketer? How do you figure out what the touch points are going to be? How do you figure out what that buyer journey is going to be, and where do you invest your time?
I think this is a very interesting point that you made, Daniel, because in a way, a funnel in a way is kind of collapsing in a way right now, and I'll tell you why. Because the decision-making process in many of the organizations that we deal with is not linear. In fact, everywhere it's now quite complex. And you mentioned a word in your question, which is buying committee, right? And I think that has also gone, it's evolved. So gone are the days when we as tech marketers would probably rely on a persona. Probably at times it was an IT buyer who would probably be the gatekeeper. We would have to engage with, open doors, and then we have conversation with the rest of the organization in a very structured, linear fashion, Daniel, as we move forward. And it gave a very predictable flow to the funnel, right? And we could put those steps in order to be able to move forward in the opportunity cycle. However, we now know that about 60 to 70% of what we have to tell customers already know, here, right? We at times, we have this challenge as well, where if you're not in the top 5 or top 4 of customer shortlist, which they do basis their own research, then chances are, and there was a 6 Sense study on this one recently, where they talked about that if there are about 95% chances that if you are on the first 5, 6 shortlist of the customer, that is when you have chance to make it. Otherwise, you're probably, only 5% of vendors who are not in the shortlist make it. So yes, you're right. The funnel, there is a challenge. It's collapsing, it's changing, it's becoming dynamic. So hence your question, right? How do we create the right process and what do we do, right? So of course, top of the funnel that we see right now, we see a lot of it's digital engagement. It's mostly how do you put content where the customer is right, where they are searching for you, where they are looking for the problems that they are trying to solve, right? So is it that your solution appear naturally in their search when they are searching in their to them? So that's one way to be there with the customer when they need you. That's one, which is through our digital platforms. And then of course, as we go towards the bottom of the funnel and towards the middle funnel and bottom of the funnel, that's where some of the engagements like your the connect roundtables, which give you human to human connect, right? Because and ABMs and a lot of other things, they come into play, which help build that trust and connect that is needed for a customer to sign a final check, right? So
Trust is so important, isn't it?
that's right. So I think right now you can build a lot of credibility through the digital engagements that the customer do. You can inform them, the customer about your product, your solutions, your offering, how you solve the business problem. But unless they have, in even in the world where a lot is happening on digital, the tech decisions are still happening in the rooms where people sit together, discuss, and then once that level of trust is achieved, that is when you go ahead and sign the check. So yeah,
Let's talk a little bit about that top of funnel,
yeah,
because what's really interesting, especially in a tech world, is you're not in the engineering team.
mm,
You don't have control over the fact that X thing, works or doesn't work. And yet you have to make sure that your product is part of that top 5 list, to your point. Otherwise, the person is typically not even considering it.
yeah.
So what kinds of things are you doing to ensure that you do show up, that you are top of mind, that you are part of that consideration list?
Now that's very interesting why you say that. Well, because the reason why a customer is looking at your solution, right, um, is so diverse, right? It's sometimes, for example, I'll give you a small example, right? I look at APAC, Asia Pacific in Japan for SAP SuccessFactors solution. When I now look at a customer in Japan, right, who's looking for, say, their objective of looking at could be, um, how can they augment their workforce with AI? How they can probably do more with less workforce, right? How do they can upskill, that their age-old workforce, or an aging workforce, if I may call them, to for a lack of a better word. But how do we really, bring the best out of them, right? So, and then the AI augmentation and all that upskilling comes into picture. But when you look at a high growth market like, say, Southeast Asia, China, India, these markets, you would probably look at how can we use the vast resource pool that we have to solve the problems of the world? How do we look at the skill gap in terms of other European countries, US, others, and how do we, hire the right kind of resources? So the same skill conversation, but the context are so widely different, right? Now,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
I give that example was that if I'm solving the same skills solution, my going in position or the business problem that I'm going to solve would be different for these two set of customers, right? So hence, it's important that one, when I am, looking at this problem, I'm able to understand my customers. What is it that they're looking for from my solutions? And then hence from that, how do I really convert that into powerful content, right, and put it out there for customers to consume, and help them also understand how my solution somewhere, would be able to address that problem, right? So you talk about the problem, and then you really give them the proof or the pudding by actually demonstrating that capability. And the third part, which is very essential in this entire journey, is to have credible customer stories who have actually done that before with you, right? So I think this is how all this kind of, probably come together, Daniel. And so, yeah, that would be my take on how you probably go about solving things. Get the content strategy right, understand the customer, get your content funnel, created well, so that you are. It is almost like, you're holding the customer's hand from one end of the bridge and helping them walk through it, right? So that they,
Yeah, and you would hold a different customer's hand in a different way, right? You
yeah,
have to kind of know that customer. Some people want to move fast, some people want to move slow.
be
Some
slow.
people want more hand holding, some people want less. Some people want encouragement, some people want to do it on their own.
Yeah, some of them are on roller skates and some of them are not. So basically, yeah. Yeah.
I used to have this mentor when I was younger, and one of the things that really stuck with me that he had said is, it's like you're on, soccer, football pitch,
Yeah.
and there are goalposts at the end of the field, but you have to understand that in the work we do, those goalposts are going to move, and you have to kick the ball toward, the goalposts where they are, not necessarily
Absolutely.
just in the exact same spot every single time.
That's true.
Or as a Canadian, I really should bring up hockey here. I think
Yeah.
it's where's the hockey net at the end of the ice. But either way, yeah, I think it's so important to start by understanding your customer. And, I think a lot of the work we do, people I'm seeing are very tempted, even in enterprise situations where they have lots of support and big teams and budgets, there's still a tendency to want to just go and make that customer story video or go
Yeah.
and, write that web article. And I think, to your point, it's a matter of first starting by understanding the customer.
Absolutely.
And also, the customer understanding is not static, right? Like, people change and the market's changing constantly. So I think it is a matter of figuring out how to do research and understanding and kind of having that input kind of being a constant into what you're doing,
Yeah.
and being humble enough to say, we don't always understand our customers perfectly. We seek to understand, and from there, creating content that we know is going to resonate with them, rather than, I don't know if you see other folks doing this, perhaps not in SAP, but elsewhere, is just saying, no, like, we know what they want, and then we go, we'll go make marketing. And I think a lot of that time, that's where we start to see things that don't stick.
So true. Daniel. At times, you've seen so much of the content which is so much inside out, right? Which is just talking about
Yes.
feature, functionality, products, what you offer. That's great, but that's something you would need down the line. First thing is why would customer give you attention? What is it that you're
Hmm.
solving for? What is it that the customer will lose if he doesn't buy your solution in next 1 year, 6 months time frame, whatever it is, right? So unless and until you are hitting that particular pain area or a problem or an opportunity that the customer has, I don't think you would get the attention, and especially the amount of competition that we have, the amount of, the customer is getting inundated with so much of messaging everywhere. So if you do not resonate well with what the customer is looking for, then chances are you are probably what we call as common column fodder, right? You are just put in as a
Yeah.
fodder just to make the
Yep.
list, but somewhere, fifth and sixth, out of the. So yeah, that's
You're
what
filling up the part of the feed on LinkedIn that everyone scrolls past. There has to be part of the feed that everyone scrolls past, right? Because the algorithm wants to make certain content interesting and other content not. And thank you very much for filling up the rest of the feed so that, the things hopefully that you and I are doing are going to be a little bit more resonant. But it
absolutely.
reminds me of a situation where it's kind of, I have an interesting job because we hire subcontractors and vendors to help with, grow our business. And I remember this conversation I had once where the subcontractor said to me, Dan, I should have charged you way more for this project because I delivered so much extra value toward the end of this project.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kind of sat there and I was incredulous because what he had done was something that I didn't want at all. I didn't need. And he just assumed that this is something that I would benefit from. And I, frankly, I feel like I took no benefit from it. So he didn't do the research. He didn't seek to understand, and instead just told me that I should be paying more money for this product. And I think that's where we start to have big problems.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Understanding, you cannot assume what the customer wants. You always need to probably, always have an ear you have to always sense and respond.
Yes, exactly. It's a conversation. As marketers, we shouldn't be talking at our audience. We should be speaking with them.
Totally.
So let's talk a little bit about personas. I know we've talked a little bit about it already, Prateek, but there's so many different people who you could be marketing to. I mean, think of just about your role, Asia Pacific. I mean, there's a number of countries, different cultures, and inside of each of those countries, each of those companies that you want to go after, there's HR people, there's technology people, there's a variety. And I imagine each of those people has a bit of a different definition of what value looks like.
Yeah.
So how do you starting from the place of knowing that you have to speak to these people in a different way, but also knowing that you're not infinitely resourced.
Yeah.
You can't come up with 1,000 different talk tracks. And even if you did, how could you keep track of them? How do you manage that challenge?
Yeah. So, so let's look at what's happening, and let's just understand the just gravity of this whole thing by um, first of all, we need to understand as business what are we losing if we are trying to serve everyone. you know as a business, you should have ability to piss off people. What I mean by that is, there's something which I recently read in a book called Diary of the CEO. I would highly recommend that our listeners here read it. Look at that book. It's very interesting, very contrarian views about few things that we kind of believe, but really thought provoking. So it actually says you should piss off people, which means you know how to prioritize, right? But why is it important to prioritize? The simple thing is that uh, y- there are right now these complex buying committees, but there are some very recent research work which was done in this direction. Like for example, Forrester did in 2024. It's very famous. We all know this, about probably 86% of B2B purchase decisions stall during the buying process. And the reason for that they attribute is because of possibly a single stakeholder not being probably aligned during the early stage of the buying journey, right? Gardner, for example, said that 74% of the buying team experience unhealthy conflict during the decision making process.
Hmm.
So if you really see, this is a serious thing within the customer organization itself, right? The way they are going about the decision, it is creating their own the internal dynamics that play between the buying committee also plays an important role on how the discussions go to move forward. And then finally, you probably, there are some other like and the buying committee is also getting more and more complex. There was a time where we looked at an average of 5 to 6, but Sixth Sense recent report said that the buying committee members have increased to now an average of 13 individuals in an enterprise or a kind of a decision making process. So there is definitely a need for us to look at the entire construct seriously. One, we need to have the relevant content mapped to the buying committee. So if I'm talking to HR audience, there it's not just HR audience that I'm trying to sell to. There is IT involved. There are CFOs involved. There is a CEO involved, and then there are whole lot of other critical decision makers and users who are part of those buying committees doing research on those products. So the content need to be mapped to them. More importantly, what IT companies have done in the past is they have addressed these buying in personas individually with the content. They have not really bought people together, right? Because that's where the
Hmm.
conflict comes, right? It is not in their individual silos. They'd love probably what they have, but when they come together, do they have conflicting priorities? How do you try to solve for that? I'll give you one example, and sorry, I'm taking a long time in.
No, this is very interesting because I think there's a tendency to want to
Yeah,
create an individual piece of content for each.
yeah.
I'm so curious, like how do we solve for
Don't
this?
get me wrong. We definitely need individual content for individual personas, but during the engagement, there need to be a time and an engagement where these personas come together. For example, a few years back, when we were looking at this problem, we had an issue of how do we sell the value of entire cloud transformation to an organization, because cloud transformation was basically not just a software upgrade. It was also about how do they reimagine processes in cloud, right? A very similar thing is happening with how do you reimagine process with AI. So I was talking about a few years back when we were looking at cloud transition, really. And at that time also, there was this complex problems of bringing people together. So, I did a campaign called Live Business League, where we created a simulation, a game on a software or our ERP product, and basically invited cross-functional teams across multiple customers to participate in that, which was like one
Hmm.
company competing with other, right? On that virtual game, it was like
Oh
running a
wow,
company.
that's very interesting.
It was like running a company where one day was equal to like 1 minute, and they played for about, a quarter, which is, about 90 minutes of a game that they played, and they compared against who had a better PNL at the end of it, right? So, and
Huh.
there was a cross functional team of sitting across different tables, competing with each other. It was a phenomenal success. We got the amount of conversation we got started between those teams and how they see value in working together coherently in a business environment like that was really, really powerful. So I'm just trying to tell you that, you need to kind of narrow down the funnel, look at the buying committees, address to those core their business challenges, but at some point in time also find a way to bring them together to show the value that there is a gestalt effect of the solution that you will deploy, right?
What a great idea to kind of force people to
Would you
be
would you want
in the room together and almost solve their challenges themselves instead of you
yeah,
having to go in and
yeah.
or your sales team have to go in and objection handle. Well, let's talk about brand versus events now. I mean, the interesting thing is that again, it's kind of tactics versus building up the base. I see it in that way at least, where
Mhm.
you need to invest in brand. You need to be strong enough that when you're in that room, you have a lot of cachet enough for the person to say, yeah, I'm taking you seriously. I'm going to have this sales conversation. But at the same time, you can't invest everything in brand. You have to go out and do real field marketing, right? You have to make the folks out there understand the value that you bring and the updates that you've made and the new things that you're releasing and all that. So how do you think about, doing more kind of content production, more kind of brand building versus actually creating that human to human connection?
Well, I think it's a bit of mix of both, right? There's of course the question is not what would you choose, one this brand versus event, but it's like how do you optimize between your
The
investment?
mix. Yeah, exactly.
What's the
Yeah.
perfect mix for you? And while I say the brand creates that pull, that reach that you want, a brand basically gives you the right to be in the top, 3 to 4, shortlist of the customer. And then basically your events, are basically the tool which takes you from those list of 4 customer to be the final one which gets selected, right? So I
Mhm.
think there is a role that a brand plays in this journey, and then of course the role which an events plays. Now, it would be very difficult for anyone, I guess, to put an investment number. Why? Because it depends on what is the efficiency of each of your engine that you're deploying for your brand initiatives, and what kind of events are you doing, right? And at each stage, of course, there is some sort of conversion involved. Even if you're looking at, for example, brand, now there are ways in which you measure your brand efficiency in terms of how's your top of the funnel looking like. You look at top of the funnel metrics like engagements, etc., to understand website visits and so on and so forth, to look at, okay, what exactly is happening there. Is that number good enough with the kind of investments you're making? But then the second point is, if your conversion strategy is not good, then no matter how much you're investing on brand, you'd probably end up not having a very effective ROI for what
Yep.
you're. And this becomes even more challenging in a multi-brand, heterogeneous kind of heterogeneous brands like Microsoft, SAP, some of the brands that I've worked with, right? So that's where this kind of challenge, I'd say, in a way multiplies, right? Because there you are trying to, probably, if you're representing a sub brand, then you're trying to identify your own identity within the main brand, leverage the brand itself, the principle, the master brand, and then how do you connect your value proposition to the overall proposition of the brand. I hope I'm making sense there.
So you've talked, I mean, you've talked about this really great, metric in the way of thinking about it, which is not how much do I invest in each of the brand
Yeah.
versus events. It's how do I make sure this engine is running efficiently so that I know my dollars are getting spent. So what I'm really wondering now is, all right, you're looking at this from a top down level. You've got to figure out what you're going to spend in each area. how do you know that it is being efficient? How do you measure efficiency in both camps? How do you figure out when it's time to invest some time here on the left or invest some time on the right?
Great question. I think it's about keeping track of your conversion rate throughout the funnel. And it's, how is your top of the funnel, strategy, whether it's working or not, right? Whether you're getting enough eyeball with the target personas that you have in mind, whether the buying committee is interested. So you have to look at some of the metrics there, like, what is the depth per account that you have in terms of, the buying persona engagements, for example, right? How many accounts you've been able to reach with some of the top of the funnel content. Then comes the second part, that now since you've got your customers hooked on to your content, then what is it that you are offering them to really convert? Now, I'll give you a small example there. There was a time where we were doing this webinar, which was placed as somewhere in the middle of the funnel. We've got a lot of engagement from, and this was a tax solution that I was talking about way back. And when we sent out certain emailers to the target set of customers who have engaged with us in the past on the solution, there were hardly any response from that. And when we reviewed that content, we realized that we are again, we have fallen into the trap of the same navel gazing content, right? Which is basically inside out. So we went back, did some research, and came back that what is it that the customer is looking for? And we realized that the customer said, that there was certain tax solution. We said that, our solution can help you get 18% of your input tax credit. If you'd like to learn how, join this webinar, right? Now, that was a very powerful, when we sent the communication with that, we saw a huge, an amazing amount of conversion there, right? About just by a couple of emails, we had hundreds and hundreds of people joining in for that webinar out of few thousands of target page that we had. And it was widely successful. But then when we were delivering that content, we have to ensure that we keep in mind the problem statement which the customer has signed up for. And that's where you would see a better conversion, right? So the problem statement was, how do I solve for an input tax credit, right? Which is basically about 18%. Now, when I am showing that middle of the funnel solution capability, I need to ensure that it's not talking about, the speed of the solution or how many records it can process. Customer is not there for that, right? It's actually talking about the key financial metrics and how you're solving for that. So stick to that and deliver it convincingly. So that's basically gives the better conversion. So now, so I think what I'm trying to get at is that we need to at all times review our content strategy, because that would determine how your conversions look like. If you have great content which is connected across your funnel, then you would probably see better conversions from top to bottom and much better ROI of your marketing investments.
I hear you saying a couple of things which I think are really interesting and so relevant to the kinds of things we do. I mean, first thing, navel gazing content, as we've talked about, just now, is so important to just stay away from it, and maybe to understand also, you're not always going to understand what navel gazing content is until you put it into market and you say, oh, this isn't performing. So just really having the ability to go out and do that research. And absolutely. I personally think a lot of folks feel like research is this really big behemoth thing that is so scary and it's going to cost so much money, and I'm going to do it and then I might not get my ROI from it, and it's not creating content, so the content has to be like pushed out too much. It's kind of nerve-wracking. I think that going out and doing the research can be actually quite simple, and there are ways to, in my view, even if you speak to just a small number of customers, I'd say that's a win versus speaking to no one and just coming from a kind of an internal perspective.
Totally. I think, the best opportunity that you have to do your own research is go and talk to the customer. I've seen a lot of marketers right now sit in the corner, or probably just managing that event that they were supposed to, where you have such a huge opportunity of engaging with your customers to understand what's keeping them awake at night, right? So I think it's so important that as marketers, we don't feel shy of talking to customers, about their business problems, their issues, and that of course needs us as marketers to be well aware of what are the solutions that we offer and what kind of business problems. So you need to be a bit of a subject matter expert in some way, right? But yeah, so that at least you can get a feeler of what your customer wants and can translate it into effective assets and communication.
I hear a lot of our clients who are, marketers saying, look, I'm not going to go talk to our customer because I have this business partner who is in the room with these customers every day and deeply understands their, problems and their plight. My opinion, I don't know, feel free to disagree with me, Prateek. I'm curious what you think, but I think that those business partners are very, very valuable.
Yeah.
But I also think that if you are only relying on secondhand or third-hand information that's filtered through people who work inside your organization, that you do open up a risk that you are going to create that navel-gazing content, and that at least going out to a few folks and speaking to them directly from the marketing department, I think can give you incredible insight that might be glazed over by a business partner who's, done this for 20 years and isn't really thinking about that kind of research, that kind of curiosity mindset, who is always in that sales mode, 10 steps ahead of the marketer. So what do you think? I think there's value to, like, if you have business partners in your organization who can give you information about the buyer, I think that's great. But I'm not sure that's enough. What do you think?
Yes and no. Actually, at times we are marketers. We are really pushed in the back end, and we do not have opportunities at time to really go and engage with the customers. I'm saying if you get it, make the most use of it. But if you don't, I think we should definitely never lose an opportunity to engage with the people who do have that opportunity and get that feedback. We should know to ask the right question.
That's probably the most important thing, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Because it's never easy for us to really go and have a conversation and to get exact insights that you want from a sales guy who would probably just talking to you about the next opportunity or lead that you're going to give, which is going to close and help him make his bonus. So that's where I think we need to find ways to do it. Research, as you said, are not expensive. Insights are available all across. There are so much of insights available in the data that you have. The marketing data is so rich. You can just, if you could really spend time and you know what to look for, I think there's enough insights available and, to understand what customer is really looking for.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe that's a good place to start. Instead of immediately saying, well, I have to do research. It's what data do I have now? What can I mine? What have I not looked at? What have I overlooked? What have I assumed that I knew that maybe I didn't? Totally. And I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to humility a little bit and understanding that
absolutely
we think we know the customer. We think we know what content we're making. But if the content we're putting out there is not working, then we have to kind of look back at ourselves and say, we've done something wrong. And the only thing we can do is move forward, and let's use the data. Let's do research as needed, and we'll go out there and we'll do better tomorrow, right?
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about account-based marketing, because obviously such a big thing, and for large enterprises like SAP, I imagine a huge benefit, because you can really get to know companies, their individual struggles, and be a little bit more effective.
Yeah. So ABM is such a powerful tool, and I have always been a strong believer of what it can do, especially with your top accounts, right? First of all, an account-based market, as you rightly said, is basically marketing when you put account in the center of the entire conversation, right? So it's like marketing to one, right? And it lies somewhere in the intersection of where the opportunity is within the customer space, right? Do you have the right to win with your solutions that you offer? And then basically also looking at whether you have, because ABM cannot be just done by a marketer. Like it is not like running an event agenda. It's like you need the organization support to run an ABM, because And you need sales, you need your tech teams, you need all the rest of the people with you on board, right? So how that's the third important part, which is alignment across team. So that's how you basically get your the entire ABM team in place, right? And what ABM delivers for me in a way is that it kind of is the tool that builds trust, right? As we start
Hmm.
with that, and trust is kind of there's a book called I think I'm forgetting the name. It was like a trusted advisor or something. I'll
Yeah, yeah, the trusted advisor.
yeah, if
And it
you
has that the trust equation in it.
yes, that trust equation, and I so much believe in it, right? Which is like, if I remember correctly, it was credibility, reliability, and there was a third piece, which is intimacy, and
Competence
then
or intimacy. Yes.
intimacy. It was
It's
intimacy.
been a couple of years since I read that book.
Yeah. I was just trying to remember that, and then you put yourself self orientation in the denominator, right? Which is so. I think that is what an account based marketing builds within a large. It kind of help you build that trust with the credibility that you have with your thought leadership, or your solution, the reliability which you bring with with your consistency of the solutions, what your customer base that you have, and then of course the intimacy that you create with the customer, with a customer first mindset, right? Where you help customer understand. So but how do you approach ABM widely differs. Many a times ABM is construed as a 101 engagement, right? An account workshop, or a one stop interaction with the customer. What I feel ABM is a mix of one to one to few, and one to many kind of engagements, right? For example, you could when we look at ABM, we look at how is it that I am creating high value multiple interactions with the customers. Account workshop would be part of it. There would be roundtables that would be part of it. How can I create value of my customer in certain roundtables? What are the topics of interest this customer is looking at? And can I facilitate few conversations and discussions with that customer there? And even if I'm having a very large event, and if the customer has an opinion and a thought leadership on a topic, can I have that customer come in as either an attendee or a guest or a speaker in some of those events? So how am I constantly creating value as a brand for that customer in knowing not only just about my solution, but also things about what he cares about? What are the things which are
Hmm.
priority for that customer, right? What is it that they're going through? And the other part about this is also, which in accounts is a timely communication with the customer on certain events that is happening in the customer requirements. If there is, for example, a customer has seen a great financial results and you saw that reports coming out, can we have some of your top senior executive actually sending out a congratulatory mail? It got nothing to do with your solutions, got nothing to do, but it just creates an engagement and intimacy. So I think the way ABMs are evolving, it's quite there's a lot to be done in that space. There is a lot of prioritization required because ABM is something that you can't do with all your customers. So you have to use this tool judiciously because it's really resource intensive.
Which
Uh,
is great in a way, right? Because it forces you to prioritize and not just spray and pray.
80/20 rules works everywhere. So I think you have to keep on doing applying that unless you get to that top tier where you think the ABM is just investment is justified.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the trust equation because the self-interest part is such a huge part of it. And the minute you have kind of any self-interest, you basically wipe out any kind of work that you're doing on the top
Yeah.
end in terms of credibility and reliability, right? And I think the thing about ABM that's it seems to me to be kind of fundamental and maybe even underlying the philosophy is you truly are just trying to understand one person, one company, one set of people. And so you kind of inevitably reduce the self-interest. The more you are kind of this one-to-many, as I say, like spray and pray marketing, kind of throw something at the wall and see what sticks, the more likely you are to be self-interested, to reveal some self-interest in that marketing that you're doing. And I think we're trained to